So another night of MLSisback tournament action have just completed, and if you want to see something that happened for the very first time in this tournament, tonight is definitely the night for you, because not only the fact that we saw our first ever penalty that was called in this game, but we also saw the first ever red card, and most importantly, the first ever time that VAR was actually implemented during these games, and unsurprisingly, the decision of the first ever VAR that was implemented in this tournament comes with a lot of controversy. So with that being said, let us actually get into the first game, which is Sporting KC versus Minnesota. And if you notice, if you watch my news of the week today, you will notice that the DC United versus TFC game unfortunately got postponed because each team actually had one player that got tested positive for COVID-19. And they actually decided to reschedule that game to tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern and 6 a.m. Pacific, which means that I have a feeling those players that got tested positive might have now tested negative for this COVID-19, and that seem like both of those players are now good to go to play tomorrow's game now that they of course are able to be tested negative of this, and that the league basically just say it's good to go for both of these teams to play the match that was supposed to happen this morning. But instead, the first match was SKC versus Minnesota, and I gotta say, this was probably one, if not the most craziest game I've seen in this tournament, and a lot of crazy things happened right after the 65th minute mark, which I, of course, will get to. But before the game, it was announced that there was no Ozzy Alonso in the starting 11 or on the bench, and that literally a couple of minutes before the game was about to kick off, they announced that Luis Amarilla was a late scratch. And when I heard that, not only the fact that I want to really cry inside after I heard that, but I feel like at that point, there was no chance we were going to win in this game. Like, we already did not have Iko Para coming into this tournament, which in this game, it was clearly shown that without him, our defense was very fragile. But the fact that now we don't have Ozzy Alonso, who I heard he picked up a knock, and maybe that's the reason why he didn't start in this game. But the fact that Luis Amarilla, who was supposed to be our go-to goal scorer, now no longer going to be available in this game, that basically just tells me that there's no way in the world we are going to have three of our best players in this team missing, and that we were still able to walk out with all 3 points. And also, that kind of tells me that I have a feeling Minnesota is going to try to play damage control in this game, where they're going to try to either hold on to a 0-0 draw on this game, or if they do concede the first goal, they might as well just try to bunker and try to lose only by 1-0 so that their goal differential doesn't take a huge damage heading into these last two games of the group stage. Now, early in this game, unsurprisingly, SKC was all over Minnesota. Gadi Kinda almost had a chance to make it 1-0 when he went through on goal, but for whatever reason, when he was about 30 yards out of going through on goal, he decided to take a shot and decided to try to chip Tyler Miller. I have no idea what in the world was Gadi Kinda thinking there, and I understand, yes, these players, of course, are pretty rusty, and that we've seen before where even the most lethal kind of strikers in this tournament are kind of very rusty, and their finishing isn't really at its best. But still, this moment, I don't know why in the world did he decide to do that, and that you do know that you can, of course, dribble the ball about 20 yards out and actually try to take the goalkeeper one-on-one instead of just whacking at it from 40 yards out and hope you, of course, score a spectacular goal. So, yeah, that was kind of a very strange decision of what Gadi Kinda did. He had another chance in the 17th minute to, of course, bury a sitter, but he unfortunately couldn't quite do that, and the game stayed 0-0. And it actually took 28 minutes before Minnesota actually had their first real chance, and it came from Jan Gregush, who whacks at a ball that unfortunately was tipped over the bar from Tim Milia. And then the commentator, I also noticed, seems to be bored of the game, and that they started talking about things that was on the virtual screen. I think at one point Taylor Twellman actually mentioned about a dog on the virtual screen, and he said how cute it is. And this is also kind of the reason why I do not like Taylor Twellman as a commentator, because sometimes he mentions some of the most weirdest thing that just make me feel like, are you actually a professional commentator or are you just an amateur commentator whatsoever? And that was another example of the moment of me saying, what the hell are you doing, Taylor Twine? Why in the world do you have to mention this? Well, everybody is actually watching this game right now, so that's kind of something I want to note of it. Now, in the 36th minute, Roger Espinoza actually had two chances to get SKC the first goal of the game. The first one, of course, he unfortunately got denied by Miller, and then following the good save that Tyler Miller made, he actually was at the end of a corner that unfortunately he headed just wide, and the game remained 0-0 up to that point. But eventually, SKC were rewarded with all that pressure that they had, and it came in the 43rd minute when Kyrie Shelton scores from Alan Polito. I wrote shocking goalkeeping from Tyler Miller because I don't know what was Tyler Miller thinking in that situation. Like, he basically decided to shuffle from to his left, and then all of a sudden, with the way that he decided to do that, he basically just completely exposed that far post, which clearly Kyrie Shelton saw it, and he basically just kind of tapped it almost like it's an empty net there. Like, again, I just don't know what he was thinking. I think he kind of got caught into two minds there, and because of that, he was being paid for doing that. And that, when I saw that goal that was conceded, obviously I knew, of course, it was eventually going to happen, that SKC was going to get the opening goal with the way that they just completely dominate this game over the Loons. But what I was also feeling about that goal is that I was actually very frustrated because, again, that was something that I feel like was almost a goalkeeping howler, and that it's in some way just so preventable. Like, all Tyler Miller need to do is just come off his lines to maybe cut the run or cut the passing lane of Shelton potentially cutting back into the middle, but yet he just kind of got caught into two minds, and there you go. That is exactly why he, of course, commit that goalkeeping howler, and I have a feeling Adrian Heath must be absolutely livid with the way that his team has played, and especially giving up a goal right on the stroke of halftime. Now, in the second half, SKC continued to dominate. Gerso actually went through on goal, but unfortunately couldn't put it away. The Loons, of course, they was just getting pinned back as SKC was just controlling this game. Like, really, I think at the end of this game, and later on you would realize that SKC eventually would lose this, they are going to look back of all these chances that they have made. And there's an old saying in soccer where if you decide to let a team hang around in a game despite the fact that you're dominating, you're always going to expose yourself, and that if you don't kill the game off, crazy things could happen where it could come back to haunt you in the end. And boy, did crazy thing happen that came back to haunt SKC in the butt later in this game. And it all started in the 65th minute. Because if you tune in the 65th minute, you probably just saw one of the craziest MLS game we have saw, not only in this tournament, but probably in this season. So in the 65th minute, Finley actually scored a very scrappy goal from the corner that looked like it was 1-1 at that point. And at that point, not only the fact that I was celebrating, but at the same time, I kind of feel bad for SKC because they clearly shouldn't conceded that goal, and that Minnesota was in no shape deserved to be able to get an equalizer at that point. And it almost felt like it was a smash and grab in some way. But they actually go to VAR to look to see whether or not if Molino was in an offside position, because before it looked like not only Molino kind of obstruct Milia's view, but he kind of was in an offside position when that shot was put in. And it turns out they found out he was in an offside position, and it was very close. And I know, as much as I was angry about that, and as much as I know a lot of Loons fans were angry about that, I was also not surprised the fact that goal was going to be called back, because we've seen this before with some of these close call whenever they look at VAR, where sometimes they think it's clear and obvious and that the goal should be called back, and sometimes they think it's not clear and obvious and the goal should, of course, stand. There's just no consistency in terms of the meaning clear and obvious, And I think I said this many times before, and I'm going to say it again. As long as if the meaning clear and obvious is not implemented very well, this is the reason why VAR does not work in MLS. It's not because VAR doesn't work in MLS because the system isn't working. It's because when you have these kind of situation where clear and obvious isn't really implemented, and at the end of the day, if it feels like it's just a judgment call, what is the point of having VAR? Like, you might as well just have referee make judgment call, and that basically feels like the same way of how they're operating VAR right now. So yeah, that's why I'm very kind of frustrated about that. And unless if they decide not to change this is going to be something we're going to continue to see in the league. Now, despite the fact that we did had that goal disallowed, I really think that goal kind of woke up the Loons, because in the 67th minute, Schoenfeld actually unfortunately hits the post. I thought Adrian Heath made some great decision in terms of his substitution. Schoenfeld, I thought when he brought him on of the injured Mason Toy, he looked much more lively in this game. And then also, let's not forget to mention when he brought in Raheem Edwards, he actually was a key figure in terms of the winning goal that the Loons, of course, scored in this game. Now, obviously, I think everybody can agree the moment this game really changed and the momentum really switched to Minnesota happened in the 73rd minute. Because in the 73rd minute, Melia, of course, unfortunately committed a denial of goal score opportunity on Schoenfeld. And what a first touch this was from Schoenfeld to able to go through on goal. Melia, of course, came out of his goal, but unfortunately he didn't get the ball. Obviously, when that happens, that is a denial of goal score opportunity, and that is obviously going to be a red card. So at that point, SKC were down to 10 men, and that Minnesota started to really push for the equalizer, and I thought the game started to really open up. But despite that, I still thought that the Loons wasn't really creating a lot of chances, and that a lot of the cross from this game that the Loons had was very, very, very poor. Like, I thought throughout this game, a lot of the cross from Metanier and Jan Gregush was really, really poor. And that thing, their kind of ball into the box kind of eventually did improve in the latter part of this game. And it's no wonder when those crosses actually improve in the latter part of the moment, this is when the great comeback was completed from Minnesota. Because in the 93rd minute, Shelton, of course, unfortunately scored an own goal, and this is all because of Jan Gregush put a delicious ball into the middle of the box, and that it was just in an area where that ball was put in a perfect pinpoint range, where if you're a defender, you know, you're kind of like, if you have a player that is able to get to there, that could be a very dangerous situation. I believe Finley actually got to there. He kind of scraped that ball a little bit, but then it kind of took a deflection off of Shelton and then basically hits it into the back of the net and past Richard Sanchez there. So yeah, that was an unfortunate case for Shelton, but obviously the reason why that goal happened was just that beautiful delivery from Jan Gregush to basically cause chaos in the box. And just like that, we were tied up at 1 apiece, and at that point I was going crazy, and that I was definitely taking the draw at that point, but never in my wildest belief that I thought we were going to get a winner out of this game. And Lord and behold, 4 minutes later, Molino would score from Edwards and Metanier to give Minnesota a 2-1 lead, and I don't think I have celebrated that badly ever since the opening game between TFC and the Quakes, when Alinas actually scored that free kick literally in the 94th minute. Like, that was something that was just completely unexpected I've seen from the Loons. But yet, that of course happened, and that of course gave Minnesota a 2-1 lead. And in the end, wow, what a smash and grab this was from the Loons, where for majority of the game, you would be drunk if you would have thought that at the end of this game that they would actually get all 3 points and able to come back from going down 1-0 and win 2-1. And you'll be even especially drunker, if that's even a word, if that they would actually score 2 stoppage time goal to able to come back and win 2-1 in the game. It was just not something that was on the table with the way that SKC dominate in this game. But credit to the Loons. They were able take advantage of the situation and able to get that smash and grab 3 points in this one. Shots in this game, the Loons had 9 shots compared to 13 that SKC had. 2 shots on goal compared to 3 that SKC had. 5 shots off target compared to 6 that SKC had. 5 shots that was blocked compared to 1 that SKC, or actually 1 shot that was blocked compared to 5 that SKC had. And possession-wise, SKC had 62% possession compared to 38% possession that Minnesota had. And if you're Sporting KC and Peter Vermees, you have to be very frustrated about this game, and that now they're actually in deep trouble, because with Tim Melia not going to be available for the next game because of the red card, and that when Richard Sanchez came into the play, he kind of showed why Chicago actually decided to cut him about a couple of years back. SKC is definitely in deep trouble, and they're about to face a Colorado team that is also kind of in the same situation that they're going to be in the next game, which is they got to win that next game if they have any chance to make it into the round of 16. Speaking of the Rapids, as I mentioned, they are now in a situation where when they face against SKC, they really need to have the 3 points, because tonight they unfortunately lost to RSL in the Rocky Mountain Cup 2-0. And, I will say this. I do apologize to a lot of RSL fans that said that in my prediction that I predicted them to finish last in this group, and that it's very easy to make this mistake knowing that RSL might not have a good team, but that there's just something about this team, even when they don't have a good squad, and when you look on paper, this shouldn't be a squad that would be compete to be a team that is going to move on into the next round. They always finds ways to, of course, do that. And I think a lot of that might have to do with the chemistry and the belief in the team that they, of course, were able to get things done. And it really showed in this game, too, as they, of course, grabbed the 2-0 victory. In the 5th minute, Bear, of course, unfortunately hits the post. RSL looked by far the better team in the first couple of minutes. And, in fact, throughout the whole entire half, I thought RSL was by far the better team. Clint Irvin robbed Martinez on a point-blank effort in the 20th minute, but it was a matter of time that RSL was eventually going to score, and it happened in the 27th minute when Rusnak was able to score a 1-0 lead. It wasn't the prettiest goal that you would see him scoring, because there were a couple of defensive errors from Colorado at that point, and that you could argue that maybe Drew Moore should have done better in terms of clearing that off the line, and that ball actually went through his leg and kind of nutmegged him as he was trying to block that one off the line. So, yeah, RSL was up 1-0 at that point. Colorado got their first real chance in the 30th minute when Acosta diving header just went wide, but really, Colorado they didn't really create anything throughout the first half, and that they were pretty lucky. The fact that they were heading at halftime only down 1-0. Now in the second half, I thought they were definitely looking a little bit more lively, but they still looked very lackluster going forward in the final third. And then right about the 70th minute mark, that's when we saw our first ever penalty that was being called in this tournament. And boy, this was just some shambolic defensive sequence from the Rapids, where a simple back pass that somehow, in some way, Clint Irvin and both Lalas Abubakar just kind of went to sleep and didn't realize it was coming back to him. And by the time that Irvin realized that back pass was coming back toward him, he, of course, unfortunately brought down, oh God, I forgot who it was. I think it might have been Martinez that he actually brought down. But either way, that was some of the most shambolic defensive display I have seen any team, and probably the most shambolic defensive sequence I've seen so far by any team in this tournament. But the good news for Clint Irvin is that he did redeem himself. He made a big save on Rusnak on the penalty, and then was able to make another big save off of Beasler on the rebound, and the game, of course, remained at 1-0. But unfortunately, the game would eventually end it would be 2-0 for RSL, because in the 76th minute, Krylak would score from Corey Bear, and ESPN was actually still doing they were still interviewing Robin Fraser while this was actually happened. And this is the thing about mid-game interview. I really hate it. Like, I hope after this they get rid of mid-game interview, because there's just no need to interview a coach that is happening in the middle of the game. Like, these coaches, they need to bark some instruction to the players, and the fact that he has to take a time to not do that and just getting interview in the middle of the game, I just feel like that is just completely nonsense. And that I hope ESPN, after they saw what happened in this incident, need to realize that it might not be a great idea to actually interviewing head coach during the middle of the game. And also, another thing I want to also mention about the commentators of ESPN in this game is that they clearly didn't understand that the double jeopardy rule actually exists. Because I know Hector Marino, I think that's the commentator, was just keep talking about why in the world Irvin did not get sent off in that instant. Well, you know why he didn't get sent off in that instant? It's because of the double jeopardy rule. When you are a goalkeeper that is trying to attempt to win the ball, but unfortunately you didn't win it and concede a penalty in the box, that's where the double jeopardy rule, of course, is implied, where, you know, you of course concede the penalty, but you're not going to get sent off because of the double jeopardy rule protects you from that. And it seemed like these commentators didn't understand that rule whatsoever, and I just find it absolutely amateur, the fact that these guys that is just professional commentator and they don't even understand one of the most basic rule that is now implemented in the game right now. So late in the game, McMath denied Acosta of a potential consolation. I don't know why I wrote contention there, but yeah, that was really kind of like the last action of the game, as you know, this wasn't really the most exciting game and probably one of the most uneventful Rocky Mountain Cup, but like most Rocky Mountain Cup in the past, it was RSL that was able to come out victorious. As the stats in this game, we have RSL with 10 shots compared to 11 that Colorado has, 6 shots on goal compared to 4 that the Rapids had, 2 shots off target compared to 6 that the Rapids had, 2 shots that was blocked compared to 1 that the Rapids had, and possession-wise, 53% possession compared to 47% possession that RSL had in this game. And that, as I said, for the Rapids, their next game against SKC, you would think it's going to be a must-win game for them, knowing the fact that if they drop another game, they most likely will be out of this tournament. And likewise with SKC, they got to win the next game if they want to have hopes heading into the last match day of potentially moving on into the round of 16. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for tonight's review. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? This was relatively a longer video because I had a lot to talk about in terms of what happened in this game. But let me know in the comments below, what do you think of tonight's game? And tomorrow we're going to have 3 games to review, which means that I think if there's going to be some crazy action in tomorrow's game, similar to what we saw in the first one, this video might be actually longer than what it's supposed to be. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.